kid from the bush who grew into a legend in his own lunchtime, former SAS soldier Michael J. Malone has seen it all. This is Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, hosted by the man himself, Mick Malone, along with Toby Malone, as they examine this long, storied career in the Australian Special Forces. Join us each week for behind-the-scenes insight, exclusive readings, and brutally honest truths from a true original. Welcome to Never Die Wondering. Welcome to episode 32 of Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, a podcast that explores the life and legend of Michael John Malone, OAM. My name is Toby Malone, Mick's son and co-host of this podcast series, joined by the man whose name is in the title, Mick Malone. Hi, Dad.
Hey, Toad. How are you, Connor?
I'm great. Happy to be here this week and happy that you made it back from Vietnam in one piece.
Yeah. Oh, there she is behind me.
Oh, okay. In the background, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify video, there's my mother going up the stairs in the
What a
background.
fucking hojo.
Sometimes there are guest stars that pop in and out, but yes, no, it's just the two of us this week,
Oh,
we'll be getting into looking at what life was like when you got back to Australia after Vietnam. So back in the barracks. So you got back to the barracks after a month or so of leave after back being coming back from Vietnam. We talked about that last week. Um, how did it feel to show up back in the barracks? How were you received? Lots of old mates, new mates.
it's a funny thing. It's like you've never left. Your mates were all there. The boozer was still the same. The barracks were still the same. The mess. That was all a bit weird. It's like you hadn't been away.
Hmm. But then you said there were a few blokes who just never came back.
Yeah, that's right. You say, where's Bill Smith? Oh, he pulled the pin.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of that happened.
Yeah, and then that's back in a time where you couldn't really keep in touch in the way that you can now.
Yeah, all the Nashos pulled the pin. The ones that we had. We had a
Right.
few Nashos now more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean it's understandable and it's not for everyone to carry on for their whole careers, but it is a um yeah, it's a big shift and a big change and a
Yeah.
lot of them would probably feel a great sense of relief that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's it. So
The
yeah,
old
so
saying, you got to want to do it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they did their bit. So no one could throw rocks at them. They did their bit, but moved on to
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
else. And so many of the guys you talk about in the footnotes in terms of having pulled the pin have all gone on to great careers in other areas and making real contributions in Australian society. So it's always good to see that people have taken that and built on it.
Yeah.
So let's get into the reading. We're going to read a little bit about what you did after you got back to Australia in 1970. So we're going to be reading chapter 29 of Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, OAM, published in 2024 by Imprimatur Books, Perth. This chapter, entitled Barracks Promotions in New Guinea, covers pages 201 to 207 in the print edition. The ebook may have slightly different numbering, so follow from the beginning of the chapter. As we read, the body of the text will be read by author Mick Malone. Whenever we come across a footnote, we'll pause in the least disruptive way possible, and I will read the footnote. And now, without further ado, Two Ranks on the Road.
Chapter 29, Barracks, Promotions in New Guinea, 1970. A little lost. The barracks were pretty quiet at that time of night. I had no sheets or pillow, so made the most of what I had. At 0000, the place started a stir, with blokes in the showers shaking each other and yelling out. It was good to see that their ugly dials again. There were a few new faces who would be the first cabs off the rank as Rios to one squadron. I would not be joining them, as I had a plan to be a patrol commander on 3 Squadron's third tour in 2 years. I must admit it was good to be back. The mess was a lively place at breakfast, and there were many faces missing. The gossip abounded about where everyone had gone. We had a lot of blokes to discharge, including Bags of Styles, who went to Rhodesia and joined C Squadron SAS to fight in the Bush War.
Footnote. Ironically, we lost two killed in action in Rhodesia, Kenny Smith and Clive Mason, and only one, Russell Copeman, 3 Squadron First Tour in Vietnam. I haven't included Dave Fisher, 3 Squadron Second Tour, in the killed in action because he was killed accidentally. Brian Jones and Ronnie Harry Harris, both 2 Squadron Second Tour, were both killed accidentally by friendly fire, while George Chicker Baines, 1 Squadron First Tour, was accidentally killed while disposing of grenades down a well.
Quite a few blokes followed him over the next few years. After Vietnam, I was a little lost. I was in my fourth year in SASR, where everyone else was taking discharge or being promoted. There I was, still a baggy ass. Maybe I was seen as a dill or a dickhead, since a lot of the blokes around me were promoted, but not me. This was very disconcerting and to be honest. Slightly embarrassing, to be honest. I thought I wouldn't get a job as I didn't want to go back to the wool game. I thought you were a useless mug, Malone. But just when I'd begun to despair of being a lowly digger for eternity, I was promoted to Lance Corporal, and I was extremely proud to be made a Lance Jack. Uh, Yet I still saw it as a nothing rank. At least it was the first step up the ladder. I became a patrol commander and then a patrol commander as a Lance Jack. I led my patrol to New Guinea still as a Lance Corporal. 12 months later, and 12 months later, I was promoted to Corporal Temporary. This was particularly important rank, especially in SASR, as many patrol commanders were corporals, waiting to do their promotion subject courses for sergeant. Laurie Fraser,
Footnote. 2 Squadron Tour of Borneo and 2 tours of Vietnam with 1 Squadron.
our excellent SSM, he used to gather all the corporals together and exhort them to bring the diggers along, as it were. The first course I attended on RTA was a T109 driver's course run by the irascible Wotu Sid King, RACT. Sid was a hard man who brooked no nonsense, especially from those young turkeys from SASR. There were around 30 of us on the course, from both C Troop 1 Squadron and L Troop 3 Squadron. We were to be taught how to drive everything from 3/4 ton Land Rovers to 3-ton Mark IIIs in the big six-wheel drives and the big six-wheel drive 5-tonner. We were taught everything about these vehicles, especially the servicing and maintenance. Driving the big ones was a thrill, especially in the Lancelin sandhills. We drove all over the place under the sarcastic eye of old Sid. His staff taught us well, and before we knew it, we were wheeled in and given our course reports. Sid sat there with a relaxed grin on his dial, a bit different to the ogre that greeted us on day one. Once we made sergeant, the sergeant's mess became the focus, and as a consequence, the gulf between diggers and sergeant grows bigger. In contrast, corporals still drank in the diggers, with the diggers and the Gratwick Club, and in pubs around town. Although I had no operational leadership experience, it was still a daunting task having my own patrol as part of the L Troop 3 Squadron. My diggers were all national servicemen who had no intention of serving beyond their 2 year commitment. We began preparing 3 Squadron third tour to Vietnam to replace 2 Squadron in February 73. There was lots of work to do, and in particular teaching the new boys, many of them Nashos, all things SAS, and in particular patrolling in jungle. Towards the end of 72, we were preparing for another trip to New Guinea, this time to Barracks, the home of 2PIR in Wewak on the northern coast.
Footnote: a mate of my father's from the 2nd 13th Battalion, AIF, Bert Chowan, won the MM at the Battle of Finchhaven in New Guinea, commanding a mortar platoon. He was sent off on an officer's course and a jungle training course at Canungra, which he passed. He was denied a return to the 2nd 13th Battalion, the Army policy of the day, and instead was posted to the 2nd Battalion, AIF 6th Division. He was killed in action near Daguerre Airfield in the Atape Wewak campaign and was awarded the VC in this quite extraordinary action, making him one of our very few double gallantry winners. I was able to visit his grave in Ley War Cemetery on my first visit to Papua New Guinea and took photos for Dad, whose wounds in the Battle of Ley came close to him also being interred in the same cemetery. Thankfully for my part, he came home, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Me either.
Again, we went through the jab process and were filled with vaccines of every known nasty, such as yellow fever, leptospirosis, and dengue fever. And we would again begin our anti-malarials prior to deployment.
Footnote: I remember we were given Paludrine as before, but I'm not sure Dapsone made the cut. As mentioned earlier, Dapsone was, after all, a leprosorial drug. It was never explained to us why we were taking it along with Paludrine as anti-malarials, but we were soldiers and never questioned such things.
Before we RTA'd, we played a rugby game against the locals at Moen Barracks. They liked their rugby in these parts, and all the families turned out for the spectacle. It had rained and the paddock was awash, but we gave a good representation and scored a few good tries before repairing to the bar with muddy sand shoes. Before we knew it, we were packing our bongos for the trip home, and it was always good to see the RAF Herc on the strip, ready to fly us back to the west. There were there were quite a raft of courses the new boys had to get up before we deployed, such as med aid, signals, demolitions, and colloquial Vietnamese, among others. Along with those, we had all the weapon training required to do the job. Most of them had done their patrol course, and it was up to the commanders to whip them into shape. We spent a lot of time on the range, firing everything we had. Um, Spent a lot of time on the range firing everything we had, from M79s, M60 MGs, and of course SLRs and M16s. We went through a sneaker course again and again, and nearly wore Swanbourne and Binder and Rangers out. We threw all the grenades, including CS gas and white phos, and we threw them again and again. Laurie Fraser had taken over from old Des Kennedy, MM as SSM, and a new era had begun. Laurie had done various tours of Malaya, 1 RAR 67, 68, Borneo 2 Squadron, and Vietnam 2 tours of 1 Squadron. Des had seen his share of action, having served in Korea with 3 RAR, Malaya with 2 RAR, awarded the MM, and the AATTV in 62, 63, but he was beyond it now. The OC was Bob, who had served in Vietnam with 1 Squadron, uh, first tour, and followed up with 1 Squadron first tour, 3 Squadron first tour, 1 Squadron first tour. He was a strange dude, one thought to be more experienced than what he showed.
Footnote: he got the nickname Captain Major because that's how he introduced himself. His most notable event was swimming naked at Gelky Gorge amongst the Johnson River crocs.
Yeah, my God, I remember it well. One of the tasks given to 3 Squadron in the early 70s was to survey the Stirling Ranges in the Great Southern region in the southwest of WA to find a suitable route from one end to the other for use on future Carter courses. There were some serious yamas among that lot, such as Mount Trio, Mount Magog, Bluff Knoll, Mount Toolbrulluk, and Mount Hassel. This was, needless to say, a vastly over-ambitious plan. Each troop in the squadron had particular mountains to climb. It was a torturous exercise resulting in diverse choice by the powers that be as to what hills they include on the Carter. The idea was to station directing staff (DS) on the summits, which candidates were to get their log stamped before they were given a new target. This whole exercise had been refined over the years. On one particular Carter, a candidate fell down a steep gully and was able to contact base using his radio with his location. It was a member of the staff under the indefatigable Uncle Roy on this occasion. I was a member of the staff under indefatigable Uncle Roy Weir. On this occasion, we determined we would have to would hack a stretcher-wide path through the harsh, stunted bush, turn from the road to the candidate's location. We found him and our medic went to work. He determined he had probably broken a leg, so we splintered the leg and strapped him onto a stretcher for the trudge out, led by 6 men carrying and hacking with machetes. We got him out without much trouble and was driven to Albany Hospital. That was the end of his SAS aspiration. So on to the Herc again for another trip to New Guinea. We deplaned in Wewak, and were transported to the barracks by truck. We knew what to expect for the weather, food, grog, and the barracks. We had 2 days to acclimatise for the tropics before we hit the ground running. We prepared for a few long patrols up along the coast towards the town of Vonimo. There was some concern that the Indonesians were surprisingly moving the border a little further east each year. West Papua was snapped up from the Dutch at the end of World War II, and their thinking was that they could eventually absorb the whole of the island. The stumbling block, of course, was Australia, who still held sovereignty over New Guinea until Gough Whitlam gave up the ghost in 1973.
Footnote: by 1973, the newly formed nation of Papua New Guinea was ready to self-govern, and in 1975, Gough Whitlam granted independence before the experts said they were ready. As a consequence, we witnessed what would pan out over the next few years.
My most memorable patrol on this trip was to be inserted by a patrol boat off the coast close to my target, which was Butt Airfield. Our task was to observe the airfield and report daily on troop and aircraft activity. The full leg ashore was by Zodiac rubber boat, driven by the unflappable Joe Van Droffler, MM. He had Vic Friendo as his bowman, and it was around midnight, they were unaware of the surf crashing on the beach. So sure enough, the last few minutes were sideways and barely in control. The patrol abandoned ship with Joe swearing. We staggered up the beach just as Joe and Vic went for a swim. With the Zodiac upside down and the outboard was swamped and dead, they got comms to the patrol boat who told them to hunker down till morning. Sorry, just brings back incredible memories. In the meantime, we plunged into a sago swamp. It was on our bearing and the water was up to our turleys. We were concerned about puk-puk.
Footnote: crocodiles.
Since the PIR blokes had put the wind up us with puk-puk stories about the swamps, we staggered through the swamp till the ground started to rise. and it was still pitch black when we reached the top of the hill. So we propped for a breather and waited for first light. At first light, we couldn't believe our luck. We were perched directly above Butt Airfield with a caribou and porter on the apron, with about 20 odd soldiers in the PIR green milling around. I gave a lockstat in clear to the SIG to cack up a message and be sent on our sked. We laid a ground wire and set about comms. Message was sent, wait out. 10 minutes later, headquarters came back and said, verify. Being an old SIG, I took the encoded message and double checked it. He'd put our like 800 metres off the coast. Oh, he was an asho with little experience, but I'd been there and done that when I was a gormless youth, so I never picked on him about it. Together we re-encoded the message and sent it. Headquarters was happy that we weren't drowning and gave us simple observational tasks. After 5 days of this, we moved down to the airfield, which had been vacated by the PIR the night before. Before we were able to get out on the airfield, we encountered thick kunai and elephant grass and discovered a series of Japanese Zero fighters which had been bulldozed into heaps at the edge of the field. A very eerie encounter. No doubt they would have been salvaged by now, as the aluminium would have been worth a bit. A porter picked us up on schedule, and within an hour we were back at the barracks. At the barracks, we waded into our normal post-op activities such as debriefs, weapon cleaning, and showers. I was able to give a very detailed debrief to Tony Harley on the manoeuvres, on the movements of the PRR troops, planes and their takeoff and land times, cargoes on and off, and daily routine of these troops, such as clearing patrols, PT sessions, range practices, and inspections. We had a grandstand view of all this. I couldn't have wished for a more perfect first patrol. Even the OC was pleased, which never happened very often, as he was always directed his love towards his favourites, and I sure wasn't one of them.
And that was chapter 29 from Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, as read by the author. All right, so you certainly weren't short of things to do once you got back from Vietnam.
No, no, it was good. It was a different kettle of fish.
Yeah,
Uh, the important part of my learning and growing up experience.
hmm Yeah, and so getting a chance at a bit of leadership, and were you able to communicate to leadership that you wanted to be a patrol commander one day, or is this the sort of thing where
Oh,
you had
yes.
to wait your
Well,
turn?
everyone did. Everyone
Right.
in the unit had aspirations to rise up the ranks, and
Yeah.
they chose people based on your ability, your intelligence, um, how thick your head was. No, no, everyone had the aspiration to do the job because everyone was capable of doing the job.
Yeah.
Um, some people got selected for others because they were favourites of the boss, you know.
Did anyone ever get tapped on the shoulder to be a patrol commander who didn't want to be one, or everyone was
No,
game?
not really.
Yeah.
No, never happened.
Yeah.
Patrol
So,
commanders were something everyone wanted to do.
mhm.
And if you didn't want to do it, you pulled the pin. You
Right.
got out.
So some good photos in this chapter of you in this period after you got back from Vietnam. There's one here on page 204. You and Bill Bryden. I'm just holding it up to the screen. If you're watching on the video, if you're not watching on the video and you're just hearing the audio, you can check us out on YouTube or on Spotify. So a young man there. So 1970. So you would have been 23. Yeah. And
Yeah.
here's another one. Pulling the Zodiac up the beach, 1971. This is on page 205. Cheesy grin on your face. Look like you're having the time of your life.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, certainly what don't look like you're suffering. And then one more with all of you packed up, playing your coolest role with a bunch of you there. standing in formation, 1973. So this is in Collie on a patrol commander's course. Um, Not all the photos that we have in each chapter always match up to the timelines, but this is a good one here of you with a couple of your mates and a Malaysian soldier who was training with you.
Yeah,
So some good ones
I
in there.
can't remember his name.
Yeah, yeah, there was some sometimes we sort of had to investigate people whose names have been lost to the mists of time. So every now and then we missed people, um but yeah, good photos and good to recover those memories. And you had a moment when you were reading then when you were remembering that when the Zodiac crashed. Um and you said, "Oh, there's just a good memories flooding back." How is it for you when you relive those memories?
Old Joe Van Droffel was one of the great soldiers who's dead now. He died a few years ago.
Hmm.
MM winner, um, top patrol commander. He was the one that lost Dave Fisher off the rope,
Hmm.
but which galvanised him into doing better. And his patrols after that were good. But him going sideways up the beach and then going for a swim became great, great stories for the birds later.
Yeah, I bet. Sort of humanizes a bloke
Big
like that
Friendo
too.
was
Yeah,
Big Friendo was a Nasho who I think he left us just after he got back from New Guinea.
right.
I don't know, I haven't heard of him since.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
old Joe,
So it seems like you're getting a bit more comfortable in New Guinea. You've been there a few times now, by this point.
yeah, yeah,
So seem to know your way around and
different
uh,
part of the country though.
right,
We were on the north coast, whereas I was in Ley down the south coast the
right.
first time. But um, Daguerre airstrip, Daguerre is where um, Bert Chowan's body is.
Hmm.
I took photographs of the grave for Dad. Uh, they were good mates, but he got kicked up the ranks, and that was that.
Mm,
They wouldn't send you back to the same battalion,
right,
so he got sent from the second 13th battalion to the second battalion, different division and everything. So Dad never saw him again.
right. Mm. But speaking of getting kicked up the ranks, finally you get promoted in this chapter. So finally
Yeah,
you jump up a couple levels. Uh, and did it ever really happen that because you started to worry, oh, it must be something about me, which,
yeah.
was the same
Well,
way.
I was convinced I was never going to be promoted,
Would,
but I didn't want to pull the pin because I couldn't get a job, I reckon.
would
And I
that have
didn't
been the
work.
thing they'd do intentionally to send a message, not promote a bloke?
Not really, I don't think. My life revolved around the boozer, mates, and playing rugby. That was
Hmm.
it, and squash.
Right,
So I didn't care too much about anything. I was always pretty well turned out, so never a problem. But I was quite happy to sit in the ranks and watch these other dudes. And got to the stage where I thought, I could do better than him. What are you doing? But you never worry about it too much.
right.
Just want to get on.
Yeah, and at the front of the book, we talked about it at the beginning of the podcast weeks ago, but there's a timeline in here, and so um, promoted to corporal temporary, promoted to lance corporal substantive in 1970 for February 2nd, 1971, and promoted to corporal temporary January 28th, 1972, promoted to corporal substantive February 5th, 1973. So that's where we find ourselves
Yeah,
around this
yeah,
time. You'd also move to sergeant in 1975 and 76, warrant officer class 2 in 81. You would woe 1 in 87 and captain in 88. And that's where you landed at captain. and then you would have gone to major, but you would have had to have taken another posting back to Canberra, which you didn't take because
Yeah,
of
that was
us.
a bit unfair actually. They could have given me a job in the Armed Reserve anywhere as a major, but the people running the show probably didn't like me. So they said, "Bugger you, Malone."
Well,
I thought,
I'm glad we were able to stay in WA, as opposed to having to go back
yeah, I
over
just
east.
think of the family.
Yeah, well, when me and my sister
You're up your neck in
we were
high
both in the
school.
middle of high school. Yeah, it wouldn't have been any good. So,
The last thing I want to do is pull you out of high school. You know, you were doing so well,
mm,
and so was Georgia.
yep,
And you had all your mates here, and last thing you want to do is up stakes and head off again.
yeah. No, it was
I've done my bit.
exactly. So yeah, so lots of things going on there, and all getting ready for the next phase, which was to go back to Vietnam as a patrol commander. But as we'll discover in the next chapter, plans change. So we'll get to discuss that in next week's episode. So yeah, it's a good one there. But that is all the time we have this week for Never Die Wondering. So join us next week for the next installment in our exploration of Mick Malone's career as we get to the 30th chapter of the book itself, entitled Plans Change. If you have a copy of Two Ranks, read along with us. I've been Toby Malone, and thank you to Mick Malone for aspirationally joining me on this journey. This has been Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words. For links to purchase your own copies of Mick's books, visit the show notes or mickmalone.com.au. This podcast is produced by Toby Malone, Joe Malone and Mick Malone, and engineered by Toby Malone. Theme music is The Happy Wanderer, the official SAS march, as reimagined by Cormac Malone and Meg Logue Malone. Yes, this is a family affair. This is a GM production in association with Imprimatur Books.